Hi everybody, this is the follow-up for the Week 5 workshop. The focus of the workshop was on Assignment 2 and how to develop a resource. So our learning goals for the workshop were to understand what we needed to do for Assignment 2, what a resource is and how we go about designing one, and we practiced making a resource, designing for a resource, and we had to talk about what we might do for our own resources for Assignment 2. Assignment 1 results have been emailed back to most of you, so if you did submit your assignment by midnight last Friday, then your assignment results should be back in your inbox. If you have any questions about your results or any comments that I made, please just let me know and we can have a talk about that. Assignment 2, there's a walkthrough for that on Blackboard now. So under assessment, and then assessment 2, you'll be able to find a video walkthrough that explains what you need to do for assignment 2. There are also a couple of other resources here for you to help you with the second assignment. As questions start coming in about assignment 2, I will put a frequently asked questions section down here. So if you have a question, just check here first to see if somebody else has asked the same thing. Okay, so we spoke about what a resource is, and we agreed that it's a really broad concept. So a resource is anything that we can use in the classroom to support our teaching and to support students' learning. It could be anything from a poster, a YouTube clip, a sound recording, a worksheet, a textbook, a handout. It could be a physical resource. It could be something like going to the library. A person is a resource. You could have somebody from the community come in or somebody else in the school. Your students are resources. So the idea of a resource is a very, very broad term. These are just a couple of ideas. Now I'll show you 2 or 3 examples of resources, remembering that there are so many resources out there, thousands and thousands of them. These are just, really just a couple of examples to get you thinking about what you might do for your assignment. So I'll show you 2 website resources. The first was designed for a Year 11 English class to support teaching To Kill a Mockingbird. The website's designed in 3 sections. The first was about the context of the novel itself, so about the author, the historical context, and then some chapter summaries. The second part of the website is about the idea of marginalisation. Now, the assessment task for this unit asked students to write a short story that revealed the perspective of a marginalised character. So they needed to understand what marginalisation is, and also how that plays out in the novel. So this is a PowerPoint that I went through with students. So it's this one here. So it talks about what marginalisation is, how it works in the novel. Just a nice background to the concept for students. Oh, that's not what I want. Okay, and then there's marginalisation in the novel, and that goes through the marginalised characters, who they are, what happened to them in the novel that meant that they were marginalised. I use this as a resource to support students planning for their assessment task. Okay, so this is a resource in itself. This is another idea, a scaffolding sheet. So we looked at each marginalised character, we looked at what we knew about the character from the novel, then we looked at why they were marginalised and what that meant for them, so what did marginalisation look like for that character. Then we talked about what effect that had on the rest of the community. And then at the end we had some suggestions about what the characters might say in various parts of the book, so what their perspective would be. And students used these ideas as stimulus for their short stories. So a planning sheet like this is an example of a resource that you could develop for your assignment. And lastly, because they were writing short stories, there's some short story resources here. So things in cohesive devices, so the language elements, the criteria, the task sheet, a scaffolding sheet for the structure of a short story. So that's one example. The second website is not English specific. It's designed for a business classroom, but nevertheless it might give you a bit of an idea about different type of resource. So this one is good because it shows you how to set up the opening of your resource. So your resources should, in whatever form, have some sort of purpose or aim for students and be really clear about what it's intended for, so that students know what they're supposed to be focusing on, what they're supposed to be getting out of this resource. So that's there, and then the next page has instructions. For this resource, students had to watch 3 videos. This topic was about different types of businesses, so a sole trader, a company. So they had to watch 3 videos. They each went for 2 or 3 minutes each. And then they had to do a quiz, which tested their knowledge on what they'd seen and heard in the clips. So you could make a quiz. There are online quiz generators. After that, they had to develop a Venn diagram based on what they learnt about the forms of business. And then we've checked back at the end, and they've had to think about whether or not they think that they've achieved the goals that they started out with. So that's another resource. This one's a PowerPoint presentation. Now, it was designed to teach for teaching Macbeth in Year 12. It was all about the moral dilemmas that come up in Macbeth. So this was a Scruples activity, and it was just a big class discussion. We spent an entire lesson, 70 minutes, just talking through different moral dilemmas. I'm sure you could imagine that when you've got students giving their opinions on these kinds of moral dilemmas, it was quite a fun lesson. Got lots of different perspectives on things. Got a little bit heated sometimes. And after this, we used this as a leaping pad for talking about the moral dilemmas in Macbeth. So we look at the last one here. You can see a really clear link between that one and Macbeth. So there are all types of resources that you can make. You want to be doing something, and I said this in the walkthrough video, you want to be developing a resource that really shows off what you can do and has a really good rationale behind it. Oh geez, I just closed that. Sorry. Okay. So we talked about what we think is most important when we're planning a resource. We said that it needs to be able to be differentiated for different learners, have links to the curriculum, and be interesting and engaging for students. Another suggestion was that a resource needs to be easy to use. You don't want to have a resource where you have to firstly spend a really long time explaining it, and then it'd be so confusing that you have to go around and re-explain and sit with students as they actually do the activity. That's not necessarily what you want. You want something that's quite simple to use so that then you're free to go around and support students and extend them rather than re-explaining what they have to do because it was unclear. In terms of how to develop a resource, now your reading for last week was the ADDIE reading. So that's about the steps that we take in designing a resource. Under assessment, I've added a checklist, and this is what we used in the workshop. And you can use this for your assignment as well. So basically, I've just taken the main points from the ADDIE model and put it into a table, a planning table. for your assignment, you're really just focusing on analysis and design. So you're looking at who your students are, what their backgrounds are, what they already know, what you want to get out of the resource, and so on. In the middle section here, you just write a summary in your own words of what your intention is for that resource. And then down in the design section is where we nut out the details of what that resource looks like. So this is the example that we worked through. Now, if you weren't in the workshop or you study externally, this is something that you can do, and I'll show you where you can share what you've done on Blackboard, and we can give you some feedback on that. So your task is to develop a resource that teaches students text type. It's teaching them some aspect of the argumentative essay. I chose this because it's relevant to you in that the second part of assignment 2 is to write an essay. Just to give you a bit of context, if that becomes relevant as you develop your resource, it's to go with the picture book unit that we've been working with when we've been doing examples of things throughout this semester. Picture books should represent dominant family combinations. That's the stimulus that students are responding to in this argumentative essay. So your task for this activity is to develop any sort of resource to teach the argumentative essay. I will show you 3 examples that students came up with during the workshop this week. So that's under Learning Resources and then week 5. Okay, so the first group, Alyssa, Andrew and Michelle, came up with this really nice visual scaffolding sheet. So it's designed to teach the structure of an argumentative essay. So I'll show it to you. So it's in the shape of a tie. Now we often talk about argumentative essays being like a diamond. This group decided to represent it like a tie in that the introduction of an essay is very broad. And then within it they've given sentence starters. So it's sort of like filling in the blanks, which is a nice way, particularly for Year 7, to help students get started with thinking about how to write an essay. So it starts out broad. Then it becomes a little bit more narrow in identifying what the specific arguments are. Then it becomes broader again when you're fleshing out those arguments. Okay, and they've got the steps there, so they've used the PEAL structure, your point, evidence, elaborate, and link. And then it becomes more narrow again at the end when you're summing up your arguments. So that's a really effective resource that you could give to students to help them plan for their argumentative essay. It's definitely possible to differentiate that resource just by modifying how much scaffolding you give within the sheet, so how much prompting you give them here. You might take some of that out or you might add more in. The second group, now there's no visual for this one, but the second group came up with the idea of having a PowerPoint presentation that would be up there and then the teacher facilitates an activity with the students. So the idea of this resource, or the aim of it, was to introduce students to how we form full opinions. So how we don't just say this is what I think, but that we add evidence to that. So it's a PowerPoint presentation that supports a class activity. Students are shown an image or statement and they are asked to respond with their opinion. They do this by forming a physical spectrum across the room. So they make a line, you might have agree at one end and disagree at the other, and students position themselves along that spectrum in response to the question or stimulus. They're then paired with somebody who stands at a different place along the spectrum, and they're asked to share their opinion, including evidence. To formatively assess that, they're asked to write an argument with 3 supporting pieces of evidence. So that was a PowerPoint presentation that walked through an activity. So that was a really good one as well. The last one is a website resource. So it's a really simply constructed resource. The web page is very simple. It's got 3 sections: essay resources, videos, and examples, and it's got some questions to accompany it. So it says teaching how to translate ideas into argumentative essay using the resources provided and promoting class discussion. So those are 3 examples of the resources that students came up with in the workshop. Now, if you weren't at the workshop or you study externally and you'd like to have a go at this activity, please develop some sort of plan for a resource using the checklist. And then in the wikis, under week 5, you can post it here. If you see somebody else's there, please go ahead and give some feedback on it. And I've said that you can use the planning matrix, so that table that I showed you, use that as a basis for giving some feedback. So if you'd like to, you can post your own idea about a resource there. I think that was just about it for the workshop. Yeah, okay. So I think that's all there was for Thursday's workshop for week 5. So you can be working now on just coming up with an initial plan of what you'd like to do for your assignment 2, thinking about what activity you'd like to focus on and what kind of resource you'd like to develop.